retaliate, and we will have a new war.
Dr. Halperin?
Hezbollah is a terrorist organization, is a guerrilla terrorist organization, but one must remember that Hezbollah is also a political actor in the Lebanese politics. It has a few people inside the Lebanese government. It has a political role, a social role, and therefore Israel must find itself in the next, maybe in the next war, I hope not, looking forward to attack Hezbollah, but not only Hezbollah, but to look on Lebanon as a whole, because Hezbollah is playing a political role there, and it's not just fighting against Hezbollah, but rather fighting against Lebanon, which Hezbollah is part of its system.
Professor Inbal?
Well, I think that we should always remember that Israel is probably less concerned about the missile factory in itself than what it means for the Iranian encroachment into the area. To some extent, this is a test for Israel. It is clearly a target that it's close to Israel's borders, a target that probably represents some kind of change of game, a game changer, what it's called. And it has to decide whether to put a limit to the Iranian encroachment, and to a great extent, this is a signal for what it might do, not only in Lebanon, but also on the Golan front beyond the Syrian border, and even in Syria itself. So Israel faces a dilemma. It's not how to deal with such a situation, taking into consideration that Hezbollah sees itself as a guarantor of Lebanese security. So to some extent, its role that it has appointed itself requires some kind of response to an Israeli attack on Lebanese territory, and this is the Lebanese, the Hezbollah dilemma, as well as ours.
Mr. Oren, all indications amplify Iran's involvement in Lebanon and its ability to actually, as some officials or Western officials have put it, hostage or take Lebanon hostage in the matter of bolstering its Lebanese proxy Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is also trying to use this situation. For instance, now there have been reports of Hezbollah purchasing lands of different denominations within Lebanon in order to build the factories there instead of on Shiite Muslim soil, in order to try and make this whole process easier for itself. To what degree does this sectarian challenge bring Israel and other Western countries that do want the stability of Lebanon for the long run at least, but not with Iranian involvement, actually to the point of shift?
It's a very important factor because Lebanon, much like Iraq, is a multi-confessional, multi-ethnic society, just like Iraq was artificially put together by taking the northern part of Kurdistan and the Sunni parts around Baghdad and the Shiite parts around Basra, and the British put it together. So was Lebanon put together by having the Maronites and other Christians along with the Druze and Shiite Muslims and Sunni Muslims, and you had a delicate balance which was in a way abrogated by the Palestinian invasion of the late 1960s, because up until then, this was, of course, the quietest border Israel ever had. Israel always feared invasion from Syria, from Iraq via Jordan, from Egypt, but never from Lebanon. But when the Palestinians were expelled from Jordan to Lebanon and started firing into Israel, and Israel invaded Lebanon in order to stop this fire, Hezbollah, which came later, emulated the Palestinian tactic, started launching rockets into Israel, and the Iranians, because the Iranians after the Islamic Revolution became the guarantors of the Shiite minority in Lebanon, and they helped Amal, but mostly Hezbollah, get much stronger and become the strongest militia in Lebanon. The Iranians have been using Hezbollah for their own purposes against Israel, first from Lebanon, but now also from Syria.
Which brings me to a question, actually. There were also reports about the head of parliament or speaker of the Lebanese parliament, who is also the leader of Amal, the other powerful Shiite political party within Lebanon, which brought there was some kind of discussion or disagreement with the Maronite Christians and exchange of words between him and the deputy foreign minister, who is the son-in-law of the president, Aoun. But this led to actually a conflagration in the streets between Maronite Christians and the backers of the Shiite Muslim Amal party, and this fighting led to some bloodshed. But at the same time, this consequences have some kind of challenge when it comes to the reality between Hezbollah and the other groups.
Well, as you mentioned, there is a division of labor in the Lebanese constitution. The president and the chief of staff or the commander of the armed forces are Christian. The prime minister is a Sunni Muslim. The speaker of parliament is a Shiite. And this is supposed to reflect the reality of the census, which went back to the 1930s. It is no longer valid. Of course, now the Shiites have become the largest minority, surpassing the Maronites. So every time you take out of the equation the foreign power, first the French, then the Syrians, and you put in someone like the Iranian, you have conflagrations.
Dr. Halperin?
I would like to refer to the people in Israel, if I may. The threat now we have from Hezbollah, we can look at it in two levels. One level, that the Israeli people have to be aware to the dangerous situation that might occur as a result of the U.S. and Iran possible war or any decision of a U.S. president in Iran, because this might affect the citizens in Israel and might lead to a war against the Israeli citizens, as we saw in the past in different occasions. Another thing, as Amir mentioned, there are many sectarian groups inside Lebanon, the Shia, the Christians, and others. Though Hezbollah is a Shia organization, it has good contacts with the other groups as well who support him. And another very important point in terms of global issues, which I mentioned the story of the issue of Iran and the US. Another important issue to bear in mind is the issue of support from South America, which is now in the headlines. We see that Trump is trying to halt the terrorism, the funding of terrorism from this direction. So it's very complicated, and it's not only a global issue, but I see it as an international, global story.
Professor Inbal, does Saudi Arabia play a role here in countering Iran in Lebanon, primarily because of the fact that it is the key backer of the Prime Minister al-Hariri?
Saudi Arabia definitely tries, but we've seen the Hariri affair. After all, they brought in the prime minister and told him to resign because of the Iranian presence there. And after all this affair evaporated, and Hariri is back in Lebanon serving as prime minister. I would add that there is great reluctance in Lebanon for internal warfare again. I think the lessons of the civil war are still vivid in Lebanon, and this acts as a brake on some of the bestial instincts that those ethnic groups may have against each other. And so far, we've seen a great willingness to absorb things which would have been unacceptable a few years ago, because they don't want to return to the civil war. And we shouldn't forget, Hezbollah, after all, is a militia with arms, the only militia with arms.
If we try just a short outline of a war game here, Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, decides for some reason, whether by calculation or miscalculation, to go to war against Israel. In his perception, the Israeli response could be either a ground maneuver into Lebanon. And then what? Israel doesn't want to occupy southern Lebanon. It will be driven out. There will be terrorism. So he assumes that Israel will try to use its air force. He therefore wants to preempt and launch missiles against Israeli Air Force bases. These missiles, if they are only statistical, will not cause any harm. But if these are the precision-guided munitions, which we are talking about, then it is very dangerous to the Israeli Air Force. And there you have the reason for Israel insisting on its right to intercept precision-guided munitions on their way from Iran via Syria to Lebanon, and even to hit Lebanese territory if they have factories producing such munitions. So again, it's a very delicate balance between trying to avert war and bringing about the very same war by what you are doing in order to forestall it.
Halperin?
Iran is using, of course, as we all know, Iran is using Lebanon and Hezbollah in order to facilitate, in order to promote its goals. We see the Quds Force in Iran, we see the Iranian Revolution Force, and we saw similar thing happened with Hamas, with the support of Iran. So maybe the shift should be of the Israeli government, of other governments, Western government, the shift should be towards looking at resolving the problem with Iran. And we see, I think, if we talked about game changer, I think we see in Trump's suggestion relating to Iran, Palestinians, many conflicts in the Middle East, a different perception that, in my opinion, might lead to any change.
Professor Inbal, do you believe that the latest report about Iran investing some $1 billion, of course, in the resistance organizations in Lebanon, in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza Strip, do you believe that this has some significant basis for some kind of flare-up, specifically because it also, this indication came from the United States and other Western powers with this regard?
I think we should differentiate between organizations which are very much under control of Iran and organizations that have a greater degree of independence. For example, Hamas, which in contrast to Hezbollah, seems to be less constrained by Iranian interests. And generally, I think that Iran is investing in the surroundings of Israel for a worst-case scenario from their point of view. And I think this is a potential nuclear an attack on their nuclear infrastructure. And this is why I think they will not allow Hezbollah to provoke Israel. I think that the evidence from 2006 indicates that this was not really a Hezbollah-initiated war. It was, after all, a war initiated by the Israeli government, maybe for good cause, but it was Israel's decision to go to a large-scale war. And as a result of that, paradoxically, I think Israel has greater freedom of action in Lebanon because Iran doesn't want a war, and maybe we can attack this missile installation, and Iran will swallow it because it doesn't want to waste Hezbollah as a weapon in this worst-case scenario.
Mr. Olin, does that mean that we need to separate everything happening in this region as a backup for Iranian nuclear aspirations?
Not right now, because we still have some 10 years as a window, as long as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the nuclear deal, is in force. If you look at the planning document put out by the Israeli Defense Forces, the military strategy, it doesn't even list Iranian nuclear ambitions for the present time as one of the threats. It does list ballistic missile production, proxy wars, and whatever we talked about here. Yes, Iran is a threat and could become one, a grave one in the future, but not the nuclear deal. But there is a problem in Israel when you try to separate the foreign from the domestic. You have seen over the last couple of weeks that cabinet ministers headed by Prime Minister Netanyahu have emphasized the danger from the north, while military officers headed by the Chief of Staff, General Eisenkot, tried to play down the gravity, the enormity, and the anxiety which all of that could cause in the population. In 2 months' time, Israel will celebrate its 70th birthday. There is no real wish here to dampen the spirits of the population in the run-up to the festivities, and there is no real need for it. Israel can calibrate and time its attacks on Lebanon for a bit later. So what we have seen is that after a first batch of warnings came the playdown.
Does this mean, Dr. Halperin, that the viability of full-scale conflagration is out of the question at this time?
I'm not sure, because I heard the politicians speak this week. I heard Lieberman and Bennett and others, and they seem that their opinion is very clear about Lebanon and about Lebanon's role in Hezbollah acts. And
so there is substance to those rhetoric
I believe
declarations.
so. I believe so. And also, you talked about the issue of 70 years to Israel. In Lebanon, there are going to be elections soon. So I believe that also the civil society in Lebanon is going to be damaged in case of a war will be erupted. And maybe they don't want either this case to happen there. But I see that our politicians, the shift, like you mentioned, Professor, since 2006, the shift in the policy, that in 2006, the policy was to focus on Hezbollah as a guerrilla terrorist organization, whereas today the focus is Lebanon as one of the actors that's responsible to Hezbollah acts in Lebanon, southern Lebanon.
Would you agree with that, Professor Inbel?
I'm not sure that we should interpret threats by Israeli politicians as, as being trigger happy. I think they issued those threats in an attempt maybe to stop Iranian encroachment, and they'll have a problem if the Iranians will not pay attention to those threats, and then they'll have to make a decision. From what I know of Prime Minister Netanyahu, he's not trigger happy, and he definitely doesn't want, as was said here, doesn't want to spoil the 70-year celebrations by a war. I don't think he wants to remember it as initiating wars. So the threats were issued, and we should see calmly what follows.
One should look at the calendar. Presidents in Lebanon are being elected every 6 years. And this is, of course, the time of maximum danger. You have 1958 with the American invasion, and then you have 1976 with the Civil War and the Syrian intervention. Then you have 1982 and the Israeli intervention in order to help Bachir Gemayel get elected. And 2006, again, 6-year intervals. And now we are 12 years after 2006, again, in the run-up to the elections, and the president is elected by the parliament, which is elected before the president is. So there is always some tug of war, and sometimes a real war, when election season approaches.
Dr. Halperin?
As the Professor Inbar said, our Prime Minister, the Israeli Prime Minister, his aim is to keep the status quo. Of course, he doesn't want another arena, another war. We have enough problems in Israel, inside Israel, in Israel with Hamas, inside the Israeli politics, etc. Having said that, I believe that the interpretation of what they say is, from one hand, is really a threat to the Lebanese government. You have to know that once something will happen, you will do something in order to increase your operations against Israel, then Lebanon as a whole will be involved, and not only Hezbollah, and we will be much more tougher this time.
Let me just add, regarding what Dr. Halperin said.
Please.
Benjamin Netanyahu came to power in 1996 following, among other reasons, what was perceived as a fiasco in the Grapes of Wrath campaign led by Prime Minister Shimon Peres. Then, after he was elected and defeated and was for a while in the political wilderness, he came back as prime minister because of the Second Lebanon War and the perception that Prime Minister Olmert and his associates failed there. He doesn't want to be in that position of failing in a Lebanese adventure and giving rise to some other opponent.
Professor Inbal, I'd like to ask you with regard to the Iranian perception. How do you see Iran's aspiration of still pursuing its interests? Of course, we heard also Ali Akbar Velayati, the chief advisor for Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei in Tehran, saying that whoever thinks that Tehran should stop its spread of influence in the Middle East doesn't understand Iranian politics. Do you think that this aspiration of regional dominance, which is quite openly declared, will just continue ahead even amid all those Israeli demands to the contrary?
Just one comment on the previous discussion.
Please.
After all, we are in the Middle East, and war is possible every moment. And now to the Iranian issue. I think Iran obviously has regional ambitions, maybe more than that. It is an old nation. It is Persia, after all. It has a clear layer of Persian identity. On top of it, we have the Revolutionary Republic, revolutionary zeal since 1979. And this creates a self-consciousness on part of many Iranians that they are destined to rule over the region as their ancestors did in the past. So there is nothing new about Iran wanting to be a regional power. It was also during the Shah times. And this is, unfortunately, it's backed by a very radical Islamic ideology, which demands Israel's destruction, which is a slight problem for us. But Iran is what it was, and I think we should take seriously what those guys in Tehran are saying.
May I
Mr. Owen,
comment?
please.
All of that is, of course, true. But because the Iranians are so sophisticated and because they try to think 5 or 10 steps ahead and are, of course, experts at chess, they would think that Benjamin Netanyahu, who is hell-bent on attacking Iran for its nuclear infrastructure, but is now constrained from doing so, he, in their perception, could try to move in such a way that there is some pretext coming out of Lebanon, out of Hezbollah, but then attacking Iran as the war escalates. So this would help deter them from allowing Hezbollah to go to even the first move for fear that in the 4th or 6th move, they will be attacked.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. And I think the Iranians actually believe that Netanyahu is close enough to Trump to change American policy.
You can't agree on this show. We have to be in conflict. Otherwise, I will be redundant.
So you want me to throw a glass of water to you?
All right, Dr. Halperin, any comment on this matter?
Hezbollah military capabilities and influence and appeal on the Lebanese people is on the increase, and this is maybe the great danger.
Well, we're drawing near to the end of the program, so I'd like to give each and every one of you a possibility to give some kind of a speculation or analysis for the near future. Professor Inbal, we'll start with you.
I think Israel is a strong country. I'm not sure we are really ready to win a next war decisively, as some think. And this is another reason to be careful. I think that the political level is aware of this fact. I'm not sure they fully appreciate, the military, as other prime ministers in the past, were skeptic about their capabilities. And therefore, I think that in the near future, we are unlikely to see a war, and I put my reputation on the table.
And on the Hezbollah side, you don't see any flare-up on their side, specifically also with parliamentary election coming up quite soon with a lot of criticism against them, shifting maybe public opinion to a common enemy in their perception?
Lebanon is not a great democracy, and the elections really don't count much in Lebanon. After all, what counts is Hezbollah, that's all. And as I understand it, the Hezbollah is under strict control from Tehran and will not start a war unless the Iranians are really interested in it.
Dr. Halperin?
I'm afraid not only from war, but I'm afraid also from terrorist attacks, from soldiers capturing, and from other scenarios that might occur in the border.
Mr. Oren?
We are living near or on a volcano. It is very hard to predict when the volcano will erupt. It is dormant, but it could come at any time. Now, if one knows the Israeli defense establishment, one can count on their staff work, on their preparation, the intelligence they collect, the Air Force, Special Forces, and other sorts of forces. The decision-making process and the discourse between the political echelon and the military echelon are not as good.
Well, this is all the time that we have for today, so I'd like to thank Dr. Amira Halperin for coming here today, Mr. Oren and Professor Ephraim Bell for coming here today, and I'd like to thank our viewers as well, and we will see you next time. TV7 Israel's mission is to give you, our viewers, truthful information, which in effect will give you a chance to really understand what is happening in Israel and its region. If you're blessed by our programs and believe our mission to be important, we urge you to support us and become a voice for Israel. You can support us by going to our website at tv7israelnews.com. This program was made possible through your donations.